Welcome to the Nuclear Power Institute's The Path of Most Persistent podcast. The podcast highlighting individual stories of persistence, community outreach, and inspiration to support the continuing and emerging nuclear science and technology needs across the state of Texas. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed today's podcast.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning. Oh my God, I didn't know we were going to have so many people on. How exciting.
It is exciting. Everybody is so eager to speak with you today.
We're an exciting group.
First of all, I need to apologize. I am wearing the burnt orange tie today for the wrong crowd. I couldn't believe I wore this one today out of all days.
Well, I'm sorry. We're going to have to reschedule this interview.
Hey.
Of course not. Listen, TEAS is a statewide agency, so we accept everyone. Even though we're representing in the background, we accept burnt orange too.
So how's everyone doing?
Very good.
Very well.
Very good.
Good. Well, you've assembled a great team there. And so let me tell you, to this day, we're still talking about I don't know if you all have had a chance to see the video or the work that Jeanette
Yes.
De La Cruz, my chief of staff, did, but we just can't wait to start sharing that. So tomorrow I'm the keynote speaker at New Braunfels Chamber of Commerce. So there'll be a lot of employers and there'll be the superintendent will be there. And we're just dying to tell people about the video and that they have access to it. So let us know if that's available. And you have given us an opportunity here as an agency to think about how we rethink about the future workforce. You don't know what you did. I mean, we are now, yesterday, we've never had an app. We've never had an app for the agency so that somebody could actually go to their phone. A young kid, I did a speech last week for a high school, Jubilee High School, and kids wanted to know more information about Career Check and some of the other options and some of the other services we have for foster youth, for children of military service people or men or women. And we told them, well, look up this. And they were like, so do you have an app? And so we were like, wow, I can't believe we've been around for so long. And here I'm talking about, AI, and we don't even have an app. And so we're going to put money aside and we're going to develop an app so that folks can actually go to their phone and look up the services we have, LMCI data, Career Check, Texas Careers, all that stuff that we offer. So thanks to you all. We just purchased, as we mentioned, the headsets for people with a disability. So that artificial using TransVR as our vendor. I mean, we're just super excited about some of the things that have come out of that discussion that we had with you.
Oh, that is just wonderful. And thank you again so much for participating in that. But please feel free. It's your content. If you want to start speaking of it, please do. But as soon as we can release the entire content of our masterclass, we'll make that formal announcement. But you please speak to it as much as you'd like.
Well, we appreciate that. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to highlight some of the services that the agency has. I mean, during COVID, we just had a meeting right now. And during COVID, obviously, we had challenging times, right?
Yeah.
And the number of unemployment insurance folks that were calling the office. I mean, we were receiving 62 calls every second of the day. Every second of the day, our agency was receiving those calls. And we were awarding pandemic unemployment insurance benefits to those individuals that were 1099s. Our systems were never set up to do that. We've always just, been able to accommodate those that were W-2s. And so it was a challenge, but we were able to do it. And so Larry the Chatbot, which is on my presentation, was a donation to us. And then because it was so successful, other states around the country ended up getting something very similar to that. And so through, artificial intelligence and being able to do that, this thing was working 24/7, where our employees were working 7:30 to 7 every night, or 7 to 7. And the only 2 days we gave them off, unfortunately, because of the demand, was Thanksgiving and Christmas Day. And so you can just imagine how busy we were, but we do other things. And that's why I was real glad that you allowed us to highlight that. So thank you to all of you.
Absolutely. And we have a great team here. And with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. For the sake of our audience, welcome. This is The Path of Most Persistence, and today is September 14th, 2021. And today we're so very fortunate to have on a Texas Workforce Commissioner, Commissioner Julian Alvarez. And you are the commissioner that represents labor, correct?
That's correct. I represent the interests of 14 million working Texans, the second largest workforce in the country.
That is tremendous. And I just want to take a step back. You mentioned, we were just previously talking about your content for the Clean Smarts Masterclass that you're contributing to us, our NPI organization. And I want you to know, although we're saddened that we haven't been able to release all of our content, I did view all of yours. And I must say, Commissioner Alvarez, it was so impressive. You have such great passion that if for those that haven't met you yet, they're going to quickly pick up on that. But it is consistent and constant throughout your video content. We thank you for that. And also all of your contributors, just so powerful. It is clear that your team represents you so well, because every interaction I've had from the very beginning, they go above and beyond with us. They're so gracious, so enthusiastic. So thank you for having a team that surrounds you, that just represents you and all your good work. So it's tremendous.
Well, thank you for allowing me to participate in today's conversation with you.
Yes, and I have to say, you mentioned Larry, that I guess platform that you all have, and I appreciate that, because from the content I understand it was named after the passing of the previous executive director, Larry Temple, and I knew Larry back many years ago, and it's so lovely that you all are honoring him that way. So it just really meant a lot to hear that, and to know that you guys memorialized him in that way.
Well, Larry was and you knew him, Larry was very helpful, and he was very resourceful, and he was very committed, not only to all Texans, but those that needed that special attention, specifically those individuals that had a disability, and some of the other challenges that were out there. And so I was very grateful. And I was honored that we did name the chatbot after Larry Temple, and his family loved it, and staff loved it, and it just meant a little more to have something like that, still have that connectivity with him.
Absolutely. So with all that being said, we really want to honor your time, because we know you're very, very busy, and we'll get started with the whole intention of having you here. And because we are the Path of Most Persistence today in this podcast, I have with us our NPI team, at least most of our NPI team, and we'll just basically take turns asking you questions. The Path of Most Persistence is really about talking with our partners, collaborators, contributors about their paths of overcoming adversities, being resilient throughout their lives, and how you've been able to do that in such a way. So with that being said, Commissioner, can you tell us a little bit about your story, wherever it is you would like to start?
Well, I was appointed by Governor Abbott in 2016 to be appointed as the Commissioner representing labor, as you referenced earlier. We're a three-body commission. We have a commissioner that represents the interest of employees. We have a commissioner that represents the interest of the public. And I was very flattered and honored to be representing the interest of working Texans. And so that's everyone from the food service industry to you all. And so it's exciting, and nothing gives me more pleasure than to see people working out there, right? And then training them. And so I'm kind of responsible for making sure that we have a skilled workforce. And as I referenced earlier, during 2020, we saw many businesses like Oracle and Tesla and other companies coming into Texas, even during the pandemic, because we had a ready and vibrant workforce and skilled workforce ready to go from day one. I'm from Harlingen, Texas. I heard you were from the Valley as well. I take great pride in that. So I'm glad to see that we have some folks from the Valley, El Valle. And so, and I know that we may have some listeners that have some family roots in South Texas, but I take a lot of pride that I come from a rural community. I'm first generation Hispanic, college graduate. After I graduated from Texas A&I, sorry, it wasn't A&M, but it was the JV team. I like to say it was the JV team. Graduated from Texas A&I University with a degree in education. Following that, I started working at a technical school, a very, I wouldn't say prestigious, but a very reputable community technical school, which was Texas State Technical Institute at the time. And it's now Texas State College, a world-class institution of higher ed, who you all work closely with. I saw your engineers are now taking classes in Waco and welding and machine shop. And so how exciting. And I'll be with actually your chancellor on the 21st or the 22nd of this month for something that's going to be memorable at South Padre Island. That's going to change the way we look at higher ed and the trades in South Texas. And then, of course, I worked there for about 12 years. I was a highway patrolman, and thank God I'm sitting down so that people don't know or listening. They don't know that I'm only 5'6". So I wasn't the most intimidating highway patrolman that was out there. Did that for about 5 years. And then following that, I was approached by Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson to actually work for her, specifically along the border. I was her eyes and ears when it had to do with border affairs and policy. So I handled border security and veterans healthcare in South Texas for her. And then in 2016, I was honored and humbled by the appointment, as I mentioned, by Governor Abbott to be one of the commissioners here at the Texas Workforce Commission. So that's my life in a nutshell.
It's a very, very impressive life, no doubt. And there's so many things that we want to pull apart. I want to take a moment to demonstrate or show some appreciation for the Workforce Commission, because from the very start, they were one of the agencies that provided seed money for NPI when we were first stood up quite some time ago. So we hope we've made you proud over the years as we're going into our 14th year, and we've tried to do really good work with that. And because of that, our missions align, because on the NPI side of things, we're about building the Texas workforce. So we've always looked to you all, not only for guidance, but for resources, and you've never let us down. So as testament to you being here today, I have to tell you, it just gives you a little extra sparkle, to me anyway, that you have your degree in education, because that is the world that I've always lived in and continue to live in. Starting out as a first grade teacher and now working for the great university that I work for. So it's good to be able to talk to someone that has that background. And maybe it's my prejudice. I don't think so. I think it's fact, but I think that probably also informs a lot of your almost innate knowledge and skill set that you have, that you've been able to create such innovative programs, and a lot of your passion. I could be wrong, but I'm sure it's a mixture of your background personally, and probably that background with education as well.
Well, I think the drive that I have, first of all, I think the success that I've actually been able to accomplish was because of my peers. You know, you tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you what your future career is going to be like. And I truly mean that. And, you know, just being around folks that are positive. You know, as a young kid, I was bullied, not physically, but just, you know, maybe, you know, verbally, because of the people that I associated myself with. You know, who thought that being a nerd back when in the 80s was cool? That's the coolest thing that could be. You know, I took pride in that, to be a nerd, you know, and look at us now. And so I'm just so excited. But I would say that I was very, again, being appointed in 2016, when I approached the governor and I asked him, you know, can I ask you why the appointment? Well, first of all, it was because of my passion for education. And though many of us, you know, all of us that are on, Sean, and of course, we had Travis and Gianna, you know, we're all college graduates, but I also have to inform those that I speak to that, you know, you can have an associate degree or an industry recognized credential and make a good living. And we have certainly created pathways so that everyone could be successful. Some people don't want to be an engineer. Some people just, want to be a welder, and there's nothing wrong with what Texas A&M has done with like Relis, the campus that you've established in partnering with Berlin, to let those people know that it's okay to have a credential and not to have a 4 degree, but something that's recognized by industry. That's why Texas is doing so well, is because we're listening to what industry demands are and what skill sets are needed to be successful. If you talk to the folks, or if you look at my video, when you watch it, you'll see Deloitte and Amazon and all those folks will tell you there's nothing wrong with having a 4-year degree, but you can work with us, our agency, with an industry recognized credential, a CompTIA certification or something like that you all offer, or apprenticeship programs. Like I know Texas A&M has now got an apprenticeship program for cybersecurity. I mean, it's just amazing what you're doing with high school kids and even your own student body. And so there's a pathway, and that's one of the things I love about Texas A&M and John Sharp. I mean, you talk about ingenuity or thinking outside the box. You all have done it. And I think more and more colleges around the country are starting to recognize that.
Well, thank you for that. And I love that. I think you're right. We are so fortunate to have such great leadership all the way around, definitely throughout the university system, but even here at NPI with Dr. McDevitt, it helps so much to have leadership that provides you an opportunity to do things that haven't been done before, and not only provide you that support, but that encouragement too, that I think we all need. And with that being said, Commissioner, has there ever been a time professionally or personally that you've had an obstacle? I know you've talked about growing up and having some, verbal bullying occur to you, and maybe that's what it is, but were there ever times personally or professionally again that you've had to overcome an obstacle that really seemed huge, almost something that you couldn't recover from or couldn't get over or past?
Well, so I will say personally, I think the biggest obstacle that I faced growing up was that my parents were not college educated. They did receive high school degrees. And this is not a popular subject, but it's true. And so my parents didn't encourage us to go to college because my parents were people that, they wanted to show you by example. They wanted to teach you by example. So it was really hard for my dad to talk to us about going to college, or even my mother, and saying, go to college because you're going to be successful. And I would be like, well, you didn't go to college, so as a young kid, you rebel, right? But knowing that my parents didn't have the luxuries of knowing what FAFSA was or what types of colleges, fine universities were out there, that was challenging for me. So I had to learn on my own. And it was really through association that I decided that maybe I should go to college, because all my friends were leaving out of town, right? Or leaving the region where I was from in the Rio Grande Valley. But I would say that was probably one of the hardest challenges, because my parents never had a savings account so that I could go to school. But once I started going to college, my dad made sure that I got a job at the local HEB. And so I was working as a stalker at the local HEB at night in Kingsville. And he was paying my tuition as a car salesman. He was able to pay my tuition so that when I did graduate from college, I was going to graduate debt free. But then there were challenges, and those challenges were that I wasn't taking a full-time load like everybody else was. Like all my friends were graduating within 4 years. And unfortunately, because I didn't have that support system that said, this is what we want you to do, and there was no money saved, I graduated, I think 5.5 years after high school, which was kind of somewhat embarrassing, but it told my employer that, hey, I was able to start something and complete it, right, regardless of the challenges. And so I worked many jobs as a janitor at the Sportsman in San Benito, to fixing boats at other places, or just whatever needed to be done. And so that was my challenge. That's my personal challenge. I'm not sure if that's a popular one, but it's the truth. A lot of people say, well, my dad always told us to go to college, but my parents never did that. And do I fault them? No, but I do admire them for teaching us what hard work was all about. And so I think that's what their perseverance is what made me succeed. The challenges of my personal life, I wish that I had grasped more when I was in high school, on certain things like my math. I wish I had taken harder classes in high school so that I could be like Sean, the doctor that I'm a dermatologist. I wish I was like him or the others, doctor. But I'm not ashamed of that. But I just wish that my parents would have encouraged me to take the harder classes so that things would have been a little easier for me now. But I've surrounded myself with talented attorneys and staffers that have kind of compensated for my lack of knowledge in certain areas.
So you just called me out, so I'm going to jump in with a comment. And
Don't make it too hard. Don't make it too hard, doctor.
No. Actually, I resonate with a lot of what you say, and in my own path, it's actually helpful to this discussion to our entire audience to recognize that not every path leads to a PhD. And here I am now, the father of 5 children, none of whom have gone to college yet. And I have a son who's a very successful carpenter. My daughter's married to a small businessman, and wife and mother with 7 children now. And a lot of people go to college because they don't know what else to do. And at the same time, there's other people that know what they want to do and don't go to college. And I think it's a very valid pathway and a very good thing for somebody at your level to nurture, that all these pathways are open to you. And college is great, but apprenticeship is great. And these other things are great choices for life. And so all that to say, now to my question, thinking about myself as a young boy, young man growing up in the Midwest, and now you, young boy, young man growing up in the Valley. I'm actually the only non-Texan on this phone call, I think.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
But I've been here 15 years.
You are now, sir.
I have been here 15 years. I've been a high school football coach. I think I've gone native. So the point here is I was going to ask you about some choices and decisions, because when you're 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old, you have a lot of life decisions that you start to make, and you really don't have knowledge on how to make them. But when you were growing up in the Valley, I'm pretty sure you were not thinking that your goal was to become the commissioner of the Texas Workforce Commission. So you've got a path that took you from there to here, and maybe some, not just the challenges and persistence that Valerie just asked about, but also just maybe a key decision point or two that you didn't know it at the time, but it led you where you are. Does anything come to mind in that?
Yeah, it does, doctor. That's a great question. And so I've done commencement speeches around the state. And I think one of the things that I share with folks is the fact that really, and I've already stated it twice, is my association. My association always geared me to kind of do the right thing. And one of the things that my parents would always instill in me, if any advice, was don't ever do anything that's going to make us look foolish. Don't ever tarnish the name, right? Your parents always tell you, don't ever get a girl pregnant because you're going to tarnish the name, or don't use foul language because people are going to remember that they're going to think you and your dad, that me and my dad, your dad speak that way. But I will tell you that I think just the hard work, doctor. I mean, I have a BS degree, as I referenced earlier, and I think just my actions, my association, my reputation is what helped me. I mean, who would have ever thought that a guy who lived 6 miles away from the local border wall in South Texas would have been working for a United States senator, the only Hispanic at one time working for a United States senator, but it was just because of my association with somebody else who recommended me for that job. I hadn't voted since the early 80s. And then here I'm going to be working for a United States senator and helping her make decisions that are important to the South Texas and the nation regarding veterans and border security. And so it was just that. And then always willing to learn something. And if you don't know something, there's no shame in asking a question. I wasn't an expert when it came to policy, and nor am I an expert today. And I think right now there's challenges with the youth. People are telling them what they want to do. And I think at the end of the day, just like you do, doctor, you love all 5 of your children, regardless of what they do. And I think at the end of the day, we just need to nurture and then just reinforce our children that we love them, regardless of what path they take. And you mentioned something about jobs. There are a lot of people we're finding that are in jobs right now that are good paying jobs, but they're just not suited for those jobs. They don't have the skill set for those jobs that they're in. So they're unhappy, or they're looking at moving, or there's so many challenges there. And I think we just need to continue doing a better job of upskilling and reskilling our current workforce. Then we're going to see a big change. We were just informed earlier today, and I can't share it with our radio folks, but we were at 6.2. As of today, we were at 6.2 unemployment. Friday, you're going to hear an amazing number. We continue to go down, but it's because we continue to reskill and retool our current workforce. So I appreciate that question, but I would say that it was my association and just the reputation that I carried with me that allowed me. I mean, I never knew anything about workforce. I didn't even know there was a workforce commissioner. But when someone like the governor recognizes that you have the talent, regardless of what it is, to do something that I need help in, my God, how could you not go back and think, man, I'm so glad that I hung out with the right folks and I asked the right questions.
Yeah, one of the things I would say is that even the counsel I've given to my children growing up, it's not about your job. It's not about, the character of who you are and the persistence and diligence of what you do and finding your calling through this persistent application of diligent work is really, that's the shaping of you as you go forward. So as you were describing, it wasn't so much the degree you got or the school you went to or the color of your tie or any of that. It is, it's all related to who you are and what drives you and how you move forward as your character is growing and shaping. And then people recognize it, and then you get basically called into the next level, called up to the next position because of your good work, because of your diligence. And I think that's a message to everybody that's listening to the podcast is, find your calling, work diligently and passionately for it, and you can get called forward to these things. But
and be humble with your success, Doctor. Be humble with your success, because I literally every night go to bed and pray. And when I say my prayers, thank you for allowing me to be in a position where I can make a change, right? And change the lives of others. But I don't take it for granted, just like you don't. Those that are working at MPI, none of you take it for granted. I mean, I have this saying that, you remember the days you were dreaming of the life you're currently living? I mean, it's true. I mean, who would have thought that you guys would be working at Texas A&M, one of the finest institutions in the country, not just in the state, but in the country. And by the way, a good football team as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, can you imagine? I mean, I would have never thought that I'd be sitting here talking to doctors and PhDs and people like you, or even having an opportunity to speak about what the agency services are. And it's certainly a humbling experience. And I certainly don't take it for granted. I don't think anybody should.
That's so beautiful. And you made a couple of comments earlier when you were speaking of your background, and I think you mentioned it's not a very popular topic, but I think it is so popular in the fact that it needs to be heard. And we appreciate you so much for sharing, because not only many of us, as Dr. McDevitt shared, but many of us have had a similar background with that, maybe not having the support or experience, with family members. But it's especially important for our young people that we spend so much of our resource time and effort on, those K-12 students that perhaps are in the same or very similar situations, that maybe they don't have anyone within their home that has those experiences to share, or even that encouragement to share whatever path they choose to take. So what you have to share, Commissioner, is extremely important, and we appreciate it because each of our guests on our podcast brings such a rich background, and you are most definitely that type of person that we need to hear from. I think too, when you talk about surrounding yourself with folks that you want to take on those characteristics are going to take you to a place that you hope to go in a very positive direction. I think that's important for our young people, and even some of us, to not forget that that's very important to hear, because especially for young people, sometimes we make poor choices along the way for whatever reason. If it's because of the birds that are around you, so to speak, that flock around you, or because you're just a young person and you haven't quite developed. But I think what you're also saying too is that don't let those mistakes, perhaps those maybe choices that you didn't make in high school, don't let that define you. Right? You can make your every day is an opportunity to refresh your character, who you are, who you want to be. And it's important because look at you and what you've been able to accomplish. So your message is extremely important. So we thank you for that.
Well, and I'm so glad that you said, look at, don't let what you've done in the past define you. I think one of the most emotional graduation ceremonies that I've ever been a part of was when I attended the Lee College graduation in Huntsville. It was a male prison, and we had 200 inmates that graduated with an associate degree. And I was telling them, don't let the past define you. What do you tell someone who has known nothing but bad or evil, and they're about to be released, right? And they're going to go out there. And I said, don't let somebody not hiring you the first time you go and apply discourage you, because even I wasn't hired in my first interview, right? But it's just, there are people like that. I mean, I always say there's somebody that has it worse than you do. I was at an event last night where we were celebrating, our CRPs. This is this part of the agency handles people that work for different companies that are severely handicapped or in some particular cases disabled. And so to have individuals that are 100% blind able to still work and go out there and tell you they don't even think of themselves as being blind, they're just saying, I just wish people would treat us differently, right? I mean, it's just amazing that people like you and I and those that are hopefully those that are listening, we have an opportunity to change the lives of so many people, and it starts today. Be a little bit more compassionate, and and don't look down on anybody because of a disability or because they're not like you. And social media has certainly changed the way we look at things. And I tell people that the hardest thing to do right now is to be a young kid, because there's so many challenges, but we have the smartest generation of kids that are growing right now. And some of them are going to other universities as well, but we have the smartest kids right now in the country. And I take a lot of pride in that. I think we all do.
So really appreciate your time and all of your comments so far. It's really insightful, and just really appreciate your willingness to come on board and participate in this podcast. But one thing I always really like to ask our guests, just a personal question I always that I'm passionate about, is mentorship. So are there any mentors that really kind of stretched out your horizons and kind of helped you along your path to get over some of those challenges and kind of pave this this path that you were set on? And on the other side, are you a mentor, or do you strive to be a mentor for others in that regard as well?
Well, I don't think there's a class on how to be a leader, right? I don't think Abraham Lincoln or Gandhi went to a class and say, how do I be a leader, right? It just happens. And if I'm a mentor, which some people have said around the state that, I've been a positive influence in their life, to me, that's mentoring. I think my actions, I don't think somebody needs to tell me that I'm mentoring them. I think just my actions as an individual, as a leader, it speaks for itself. As far as people that mentor me, I think Dr. McDevitt's going to like this, because I refereed college football for over 15 years, and I currently referee high school ball. And so the last time I was in College Station, they booed me out of the stadium, but I won't tell you what game I did. But folks that were, you got to remember, when I graduated from college and working at Texas State Technical College, or TSTI at the time, the folks that I worked with, I was a director, and the folks I worked with were all in their 40s at the time, which I thought was really old considering I was 23, right? But those people served as my mentors. And I mean, things like the way they spoke, the way they conducted themselves in a meeting. I never told them they were my mentors, but now whenever I go somewhere, I'll acknowledge that I picked up a lot of my traits as a result of me just being surrounded by them. So the way they spoke, the way they wrote, the way they dressed, the way they conducted themselves, and how much they loved their families and their wives, and how they conducted themselves after working hours. I mean, those are my mentors, not somebody that sat me down and like the Kung Fu days and said, where did we mess up, grasshopper? You know, of course, none of your people are going to understand what that means, but that was David Carradine on Kung Fu, right?
I got it.
You got it. Yeah, I could tell who got it. I could tell who got it. I could tell who got it. I gave away our age, but you know, I think mentors just are mentors, right? I mean, I'm sure, Travis, that there are people that look up to you in your small community or wherever you're from and say, God, I wish I had that job, or I wish I was like him. I want to live my life like he did so that I could get to that point. And so I think we all serve as mentors, but I would say friends like Michael Buck, Dr. J. Gilbert Liao, who is the president of TSTI for many years. Certainly my parents were mentors. You know, they weren't the smartest people, but again, they led by example. And that's how I learned, but it was from example of actions from others. My mother wasn't a drinker. My dad, you know, worked 7 days a week as a car salesman so that he could make money to pay my tuition. And so they were my mentors.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Sorry if I get a little emotional. I talk about my parents, but I just love them.
We've had laughs, we've had tears, we've had everything on this podcast. So not at all.
We choose to see that as strength. Okay. So if we ever get a little emotional, it's about showing our strength in that way because we are so passionate. So please, no need to apologize.
You don't want to see me cry, get ugly.
That's okay. We'll all cry together. But
we'll have a different podcast for that one.
But Travis, that was a great question. I mean, those are really good questions that you're all pointing out. And you know, one of the things that I'm actually surprised is, you know, when I do these things, I think the last thing that a person who's successful or who has done well and has been very fortunate like me, not that I thought that this was ever going to happen, but you know, no one likes to talk about themselves, right? You want to talk about others and you want to give thanks to those that got you where you're at. And so literally, I always think if I ever won and I've been on the receiving end of awards, right? But I always thank those that got me there, like, you know, just your staff, you know, the grant writers, the people that work in our agency that will never meet our customers or our clients, you know, or on the other end of making sure that I was able to speak to you today, like Jeanette, you know, she's certainly a great leader, making that class that she put together for you in record time was amazing. And to this day, I give her many thanks. And she's probably one of the smartest women I've ever met, even though she's from Texas Tech, doctor. But
well, it's like I said, I've only been here 15 years, so I'm not quite as embedded. I've caught on to some rivalries, but not that one.
Well, this is just wonderful. And again, we're trying to respect your time. So we're going to start winding down. And in doing so, this might give some of my colleagues an opportunity to come up with their final thoughts and questions. But I have to ask, you know, you mentioned being a referee. And you mentioned HEB. So shout out to HEB, the great grocery chain of Texas, HEB, because we, for those of us that shop there, but also I worked there too. And I appreciate all that I learned while I was there, starting off as they did back in the day. Everyone had to start off as a stacker. Yes. So that was a very good training. But I just want to know through that and refereeing. And again, I asked this question because I had a child that was a collegiate athlete, and being a high school principal, I have a strong appreciation for referees. So I want to know through those experiences at both, maybe being a referee or working at HEB, what were some of those valuable lessons that you learned? Because I think sometimes our young people think, oh, working at a grocery store isn't the most impactful or most skill gaining experience. And those that don't appreciate referees, what have you learned in those roles?
Wow, well, HEB, that's a great question. But, you know, HEB, and it's so funny, I spoke about this weekend at a conference. HEB taught me, you know, customer service. You know, speaking to someone, making sure that when, and some of the things they taught us in sacking school, I guess you could say, was always, speaking to the customer and looking at them eye to eye. No one wanted to, never look upon or never look down on anyone, right? Customer service was important. What could I do as a sacker to make someone else's job easier? For example, if I saw trash outside, what was it going to take for me to pick it up, put in the trash can so that the guy who's doing the maintenance, would, was just kind of saving him some time from having to go out there and doing it. And usually the guys that worked in maintenance there with us were older. I mean, I was 16, 17 years old working at HEB, and even through my college years. And the folks that were usually the maintenance folks were like in their 60s or 50s. And I thought, my God, if I can make their job easier, I'll do it. So customer service, how to relate to folks, how to take instructions, put it here, put it there without having to respond back negatively, right? If something wasn't sacked right, being able to accept criticism, don't put the bread on the top, on the bottom, you fool. I was called everything. And so that helped me when I was a highway patrolman. And that helped me when I was a football official, being able to take criticism, but not respond. Lots of times it taught me that sometimes coaches just want, and Doctor knows this, coaches just want to air out a frustration and just let them air it out. There's no reason to get back and have rabbit ears and be listening to every concern they have on the sideline, right? And just tell them, Coach, I'll be watching for that. That helped me being able to positively respond to a negative. And being punctual, both of those, I had to be there. Or if I didn't, somebody else was going to get out later. I knew that as a sacker, we also had responsibilities to clean the store afterwards. And so clean the toilets and all that. And never did I look down on it. I just felt like, hey, this is going to teach me a skill, which it did, a life learned skill that I still cherish to this day, being clean, being punctual. Football is the same way. We used to have this rule in football that if you were on time, you were late. And so being able to be there 4 hours before kickoff on a Saturday was important to us. Command presence was important. The way we looked said a lot about the character. So if in HB, if I had a nice clean shirt, which my mom always gave me, a nice clean jeans, it looked like I was a clean person and I was a reflection of my parents. And so that's the way I was in football. I make sure that my uniform always looks good. I always have a new flag, even though I wore out the other one from the previous year, right, Coach? Those are all important things. So even in DPS, there was we used to have this saying that there was a command presence about us. And that's the way I look at things today is, I make sure that I dress right. I represent not only the agency, but my governor. I represent my dad, when I wore a suit, even though he's never really had one. And so those are things that we need to keep in mind, that everything that we do leads us to where we're at today.
Oh my goodness, I could not have asked for a better response. Thank you so much. So everything you said just resonates. And I think when you talked about what you learned at HEB, and again, not to get me so HEB specific, although again, appreciate them so much. But I think that's so true. I always thought in my days of being a high school principal that a lot of that did inform how you take care in the small things and how you were very intentional about how you do those little tasks that a lot of people take for granted. Mm-hmm. And one of the aspects that I think you can relate to as well is that when you work with the public, that the intensity of their message that they're giving you isn't always about you. Right. It feels like it's about you because they're directing it at you and you feel their intensity of emotion. But it was a good learning experience to realize that although they're saying it to you and they're not happy, it may be about something much larger, and how to separate yourself and appreciate that person's perspective, even though it didn't feel good, but it almost made me more empathetic. So I love what you said, and I think those messages are going to resonate with our audience, and especially hopefully to young people, that they really hear that no matter your humble beginnings and those jobs that you don't always appreciate at the time, but everything that you learn builds on itself, and it will hopefully take you to new and exciting places, maybe even, working directly for or with the governor of the great state of Texas. So
I'm hoping that one of your listeners will take over my job in the future. I mean, that's our goal, right? Our goal is to have somebody replace us, and who better than someone that experienced, hardship. And so, and of course, that's not the only way you're going to be successful, right? It's just, you brought up some interesting things. I think my experience at HB, like I said, being yelled at or on the field, or as a highway patrolman, being screamed at or spit at, or being on a fight on the side of the road, it helped me here, because, during the pandemic, having the number of calls that came in, or the people that were upset because, extended benefits ended, or that their money was ending, we had to think of ways to make sure that we could respond passionately, because at the end of the day, I didn't know everyone's circumstances. But if I leave the audience with anything, I do want the young adults to know that we have such a bright future in Texas because of people like them. We have the smartest generation that's going through school. I mean, I learned of something just last week, that we have high school kids that are, and they already know this, but are competing with these video games. I don't know what they call it, e-game or whatever they call it, but that's just amazing that things that I'll never fathom, they understand. And it's just so refreshing to know that we have such a great, vibrant, smart group of young men and women that are going to take over this great state of ours in this country. So, I'm just so excited.
So you've gone through lots of change, right? From education to DPS to the Texas workforce. I mean, those are drastic changes, right? They're nothing major. And we have listeners who are sometimes they're high school students, and they might be looking at a big change of possibly leaving the Valley. I'm a Harlingen native. So
Hey.
Valley, it was a bit of a culture shock, right? We're very unique down there. And then I know you mentioned some of the workers, right? About reskilling, retooling. Their industry's dying. They're going to have to make a change to something completely different, something, drastic. So what gave you the ganas, the apoyo, the courage to make these drastic changes, that leap of faith?
Well, I tell people that, success comes with the price sometimes. The price of leaving home, the price of leaving your loved ones behind, the price of moving to a different place. That happened to me when I moved here to Austin. I don't have family here. I don't have any friends here. I don't associate with anybody here. But at the end of the day, I just look back and think, okay, what am I doing to make changes, right? And so I think if you're a leader, and there's nothing wrong with even being one that, doesn't want to lead, I think you need to just sit down and realize that change is going to happen regardless if you're ready for it or not. And so it's, how do you cope with it? And so leaning towards, as Travis mentioned earlier, like mentors, picking up the phone and asking them for their advice. But somebody called me last night, was telling me that they just got a promotion and they're going to go to Houston, but they're going to have to leave their family behind. I said, look, partner, sometimes success comes with the price. Hopefully it's just going to be a temporary thing. And so that's the only advice I could give to someone, that change is going to happen regardless. It's how we adapt to it. And hopefully we have that support system with family and friends that are going to help us get through it.
Well, Commissioner, we're going to close out soon, and I just want to thank you so much for your time, your dedication, all that you do, not only within your team, but for the great state of Texas. And no doubt your messages today are going to be, again, so impactful to so many. Were there any final comments you would like to make? Maybe perhaps something you thought we may have asked you that we didn't ask, any little tidbits of information, golden nuggets of wisdom, perhaps?
Well, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this platform regarding not just a little bit about myself, but the passion that I have for the future of Texas. I certainly appreciate the fact that Texas A&M and other fine universities around the country have recognized that not all students are cut out to be four-year degree students, but that we've made it available for them to go different pathways. And I love what's happening in Texas, that we're listening to employers and we're keeping up with the demand, and we're training individuals in Texas a specific skill set to be successful. We're not wasting no one's time. And so the fact that people like John Sharp and in his background in economic development make it possible for every person in Texas that wants to go to Texas A&M a reality, whether it's through a certification, associate degree, or a four-year degree. I just commend you all, and any student know that anything that you decide to do after high school is considered college, whether it's apprenticeship programs, whether it's going to a technical school or a community college or a university. These are options that we all have, and they've never been more important than they are today. And so that's all I really wanted to say. And I really appreciate the fact that you've allowed me to have this platform to talk a little bit about our agency, this great agency that I work at.
On that note, we'll close out with much gratitude and appreciation to you, Commissioner. And we just want to encourage all of our listeners to not only listen to this outstanding conversation today, but listen to all of our podcasts and visit us on all of our platforms. Until next time, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. The Nuclear Power Institute is a joint center with Texas A&M University and the Texas A&M Engineering Experiment Station, and is a component of the Nuclear Engineering and Science Center. For more information about our center or about our guest speaker today, please visit our website at npi.tamu.edu and look for us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you.